Sayın Rektörüm, Sayın Hitit Üniversitesi Rektörü Profesör Doktor Ali Osman Öztürk, Sayın Rektör Yardımcılarım, Sayın İstanbul Ticaret Odası Genel Sekreterimiz ve mütevelliyet üyemiz Doçent Doktor Nihat Alayoğlu, farklı üniversitelerden çok değerli hocalarımız, üniversitemizin değerli akademisyenleri, çalışanları, sevgili öğrenciler ve kıymetli misafirler. Bilim ve Toplum Buluşmaları dizisinin ilk programına hepiniz hoş geldiniz. Etik ve strateji alanında yaptığı çalışmalarla dünyaca üne kavuşmuş bir ismi ağırlıyoruz bugün. Sevgili misafirlerimiz, programımız Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Yüceloğlu'nun açılış konuşmalarıyla başlayıp ardından Rektör Yardımcımız Profesör Doktor Abdülhalim Hocamıza devam edip Profesör Rafik Beekun'un konuşmalarıyla sona erecektir. Şimdi Rektörümüz Sayın Profesör Doktor Yüceloğlu'yu açılış konuşmalarını yapmak üzere kürsüye davet ediyorum.
Dear distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to extend my greetings to all our students, academics, and all my friends. We have very special guests today. One from Nevada, Mr. Professor Dr. Rafik Beekun'u, and we have one of my other friend, Ali Osman Öztürk. He is the rector of Hittit University, dear vice rectors, secretary generals, one member of board of trustee, Nihat Alayoğlu, Mr. Docent, associated professor Nihat Alayoğlu. I would like to extend my warm greetings again, and I would like to say thank you very much for coming here. We are just starting with a new point. It's the first step for our meeting series. I think it will go smoothly, and we will invite many prominent academics from all over the world here. We met first time with Mr. Rafik Beekun'u here, just at this university. He came here with Fulbright scholarship, and he contributed a lot to this university with publications, co-edited publications, and other lectures, courses. He is really a great person, great personality, fascinating personality. I invited him to Bosnia when I was rector of International University of Sarajevo. He contributed a lot to that university also. He gave several courses, several lectures, and certificate programs to our students there, to our academics, on strategical planning, on marketing, leadership, entrepreneurship, and through these contributions, we did a lot of things together. And I would like to thank one more time, thank to him. I am very sorry. I am really very excited because there are so many distinguished academics and also students here. It's full of people. This conference hall is full of people, and this is the first time that I am talking in English for after a long time period. Thank you very much for coming here, and please follow this meeting series. I would like to say this to our students. Thank you very much again.
Rektörümüze konuşmalarından dolayı çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Şimdi ise Rektör Yardımcımız Sayın Profesör Doktor Abdülhalim Zaim'i konuşmalarını yapmak üzere kürsüye davet ediyorum.
Dear rectors, Secretary General of Istanbul Chamber of Commerce and our member of Trustee Board of Trustees, our Vice Rector, our deans, professors and students. Welcome to this meeting. As our rector mentioned earlier, this is one of the first of a series of meetings. It has been designed for improving our perspective of scientific and sociological background. Therefore, I would like you to attend those meetings and get the best out of those meetings. I hope it will be helpful, and I know that our first guest, Dr. Rafik Beekun'u, in fact, is a very important academician on this area. If you followed his resume on our website, you know that he is, in fact, at the same time, president of Muslim Social Scientists Association, and at the same time, professor of University of Nevada, and he is working mainly on ethical problems on social sciences. His main topic of interest are Islamic business ethics, leadership and Islamic perspective, strategic planning and implementation for Islamic organization, and business ethics. And today he is going to give us a presentation mainly on ethical perspective on decision making, and this is a very important topic, and we know that I know that everybody will listen this presentation with enthusiasm. And thank you very much again to Dr. Rafik Beekun'u for accepting our invitation and being here, and I hope this will be an interesting and a helpful presentation. Thank you very much for coming here.
Sayın hocamıza konuşmalarından dolayı çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sevgili misafirlerimiz, Profesör Rafik Beekun'un kürsüye davet etmeden önce kısa bir özgeçmişini paylaşmak istiyorum sizlerle. Nevada Üniversitesi'nde işletme ve strateji profesörü olan Rafik Beekun, halen mevcut yönetim alanı koordinatörüdür ve yönetim bilimleri bölümünün eski başkanıdır. İşletme yüksek lisansını ve doktorasını Texas Üniversitesi'nden, lisans ve yüksek lisans derecesini Columbia Üniversitesi'nden almıştır. Temple Üniversitesi ve Texas Üniversitesi'nde eğitim vermiştir. Nevada Üniversitesi'nde gerek yüksek lisans gerekse de lisans programlarına ders veren Dr. Beekun, stratejik yönetim, uluslararası yönetim ve organizasyon teorisi konularında uzmanlaşmıştır. Science Fulbright Scholar olarak 1999-2000 yılları arasındaki Mauritius Üniversitesi'nde ve 2013 güz döneminde ise İstanbul Ticaret Üniversitesi'nde görev yapmıştır. Journal of Applied Psychology, Strategic Management Journal, Decision Sciences, Human Relations, Journal of Management, Journal of Management Studies, International Journal of Human Resource Management ve Journal of Business Ethics dahil pek çok önemli dergide makaleleri yayınlanmıştır. İslami iş etiği ve liderlik, İslami bir bakış gibi pek çok kitaba kaleme almıştır. Journal of Management Development dergisinin özel sayısının eş editörü görevini üstlenmiştir. Ayrıca İslam işletmecilik üzerine online bir ders vermektedir. Kuzey Amerika Müslüman Sosyal Bilimciler Birliği'nin 2 dönem başkanlığını yapmıştır. Ayrıca kendisi Kuzey Amerika İslam Topluluğu'nun Şura Meclisi ve Kuzey Amerika İslami Vakfı'nın danışma kurullarında da yer almıştır. Dünya Bankası, IBM, Savala, IKEA, Proton, Kral Saud Üniversitelerinde de danışmanlık yapmıştır. Sevgili misafirlerimiz, şimdi Nevada Üniversitesi'nde işletme ve strateji profesörü Rafik Beekun'u konuşmalarını yapmak üzere sahneye davet ediyorum.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I feel very much at home coming here, seeing so many friends, distinguished professors, distinguished rectors in the plural, and also maybe former students, former colleagues. Istanbul Ticaret Üniversitesi is very dear to me. And so today what I'm going to be talking about, and hopefully you have a handout in front of you, which is a small case that I'm going to use to anchor this presentation. Now, this presentation is not going to be very theoretical. By the grace of Allah, as you've seen, I have published substantially in ethical theory and can go there if need be, but I decided I would aim it more towards the middle so that people from outside the area or people from inside the area can get something that you can walk away from. So when we look at decision making, when we look at ethics, ethics is something very personal. It's not for me to turn you into a more ethical person. What I'm going to be basically talking about today is a model that would enable you both as in your profession as well in your personal life to make better decisions when confronted with ethical dilemmas. All of us, every single day, face ethical dilemmas, whether we are respecting traffic laws when we are driving, whether when we are talking to somebody we're telling a fib. We basically face ethical issues, ethical dilemmas every single day of our life. And the question is, how do we deal with them? Some of those ethical dilemmas are at a very minor level, others are major. And so the three objectives, and of course I managed to do the exact opposite, the three objectives that I'm going to talk about today, I have basically several goals. The first one, and I'm going to start with it, and then I'm going to go and throughout this presentation, I'm going to refer to the latest in research with respect to ethical decision making. So my four aims, basically understanding the reason why good people behave unethically. Why do good people sometimes make bad decisions, make evil decisions? Phil Zimbardo from Stanford published a book called The Lucifer Effect. It's something that you may want to look at, and that book basically talks about this idea of, the subtitle is, why do good people turn evil? So that's the first goal, and throughout this presentation, by the end of it, inshallah, you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. I'm not going to refer to it all at the same time. Secondly, I'm going to talk about a process, a 7-step process, whereby when you're confronted with an ethical dilemma, a lot of you, either as a professional or alternately later in your business career or wherever, you're going to face, as I said, ethical dilemmas. And so how do you do this? What's a good way for you to when you face one of those, to not panic, to not rush to take the easy path, but rather to deal with it? The third one is how to apply this to ethical dilemmas in business. All of you, inshallah, should have in front of you a handout. It's a very short case that will enable. And finally, I will end with a set of ethical guidelines, since we are in Istanbul Ticaret Üniversitesi, primarily for business people, but something that all of you can use. So so why do good people engage in bad acts? If I look at this audience right now, every single one of you thinks, and this is based on recent research, that you're more ethical than the two people on each side of you. Think about that for a second. Each one of you in this audience thinks that you're more ethical than each person on either side of you. Right? So we tend to think positively about our own image, and we tend sometimes to think less positively about others. And then the question is, why do good people engage in bad? People don't always do what's right, right? And there are many ways that responsible decision making can go wrong. And sometimes it is just easier to tell a fib, to tell a lie. It's just easier when you are in a situation where you're faced with an ethical dilemma, to succumb under pressure from your boss. It takes courage at times to be ethical. So that's one reason. A second reason, so people can just choose to be unethical. So we should not underestimate the likelihood of immoral choices and unethical behavior. But there are a lot of reasons why people behave unethically, and as I said, I will talk more about that as I proceed. Phil Zimbardo, in his book, The Lucifer Effect, Why Good People Turn Evil, point out that for people to do evil things, they have to dehumanize the other. They have to look at the other person as less than a human being. Because you think about Hitler and the Nazis. You think about Iraq and Abu Ghraib. Right? You have to look at other person as being somebody less than human for a person to do that kind of evil towards somebody. And the people who do that are perfectly good people. It's just that in their mind they are right and the other side is not. So, this case is in front of you right now, and I want you to take 30 seconds to read it, if you don't mind. And I'm going to use the short case to anchor this presentation. You all should have a sheet of paper like this. Do you all have it? Okay. Can you take like 30 seconds to read it, please? Okay, that was 30 seconds. So you're going like, but iPods are out of fashion. Actually, iPods are coming back in America. Apple just produced a new iPod. And some of them are a full gigabyte, or some of them are, I'm sorry, not 1 gigabyte, they are like 1 terabyte. They're huge. They are used, many universities use them for students to store notes and things like that, and they are used also by athletes a lot. So the iPod, unlike maybe in other parts of the world, has come back. And as you read that short scenario, we're going to use it. And then the key question is, what would you do, right? I'm not going to make this interactive because I have only 1 hour. So then we'll try to see what are some of the things that people can do with respect to that short scenario. So, and to do that, we're going to look at an ethical decision-making process that is in 7 steps, right? First, determining the facts and identifying the ethical issues involved. We are going to use a stakeholder's perspective, partly because in the field of decision-making, as well as in the field of ethics, a dominant paradigm right now is the stakeholders approach. It dominates not just the field of ethics, it also dominates the field of management. So I'm going to briefly touch on it. As I said, by the grace of Allah, I published a paper on stakeholders approach in the journal Business Ethics in 2005. So if you want, you can go look at it. Consider the available alternatives using moral imagination. Then look at how a decision affects multiple stakeholders. We're going to look at a stakeholder map. And then look at it in terms of consequences. That's in ethics, that's what we call utilitarianism, or the other side of it, egoism. Then duties and principles, the ontology. I'm not going to go heavy in theory. And the last one, virtue ethics, what are the integration for your personal integrity and character. The last point I'm going to talk about is making a decision and then monitoring and outcomes. So I'm going to make this very applied. I'm not going to go in theory as much. But as I said, I teach a graduate course in ethics, and later on, if you want to ask theoretical questions, I'll be more than happy to do that. So determining the facts is very important, because very often when you're confronted with an ethical dilemma, emotions are involved. And when emotions are involved, something that's like this becomes like this. So decision makers, you and me, when we make decisions, we never make decisions in reaction to an objective environment. Carl Weick, in his book, The Social Psychology of Organizing, one of the top organization theorists in the world, said that when we make decisions in response to an environment that is subjectively perceived, otherwise known as an enacted environment. So we basically, there's, all of you are here, but we only perceive certain features of you, and we're going to respond to that subjectively perceived environment. This is what happens when we confront an ethical dilemma. And perception can be very misleading, as we will see in a couple of minutes. So knowing the facts and carefully reviewing the circumstances can help solve disagreements at an early stage. You don't want to respond to a situation that you're emotionally responding to. You don't want to try to solve a problem that doesn't exist. So you want to get the facts, okay? And so what are the key facts that you should consider before making a decision? In the iPod case, it's very clear. It's late at night. You're at the university. You come into this class. Nobody is there, and you see this iPod, right? And you look at the iPod, and you turn it on. Now, no, we don't know why you turned it on, but you turned it on, and it has your favorite music. I don't know Turkish music that much, but what's a great singer right now these days? Maybe. Yeah, whoever you are thinking of, right? So you're smiling, right? Your favorite music. Right? And I was going to say Beyonce, but you guys, some of you may know who I'm talking about. She's not my mother. Anyway, maybe my daughter. But the iPod clearly works. Now you do something else. You look and check if anybody has seen you. This is like the first red light. Right? Why are you checking if anybody has seen you? And secondly, you put it close to your briefcase or backpack, which indicates possession, to give you time to think during class what to do. So those are kind of the facts of the case. It's a short case. There may be other facts that are important, and we can talk about that later on. Now, let's assume you already owned an iPod, right? Would that make a difference? What do you think? Would that make a difference? Yeah? Yeah? If you own the same model, it won't make a difference. But let's assume you did own that kind of iPod, and you're an athlete. It'll cause you to think twice. Because we know in decision making, your starting point is very important. If you have you have a couple of Turkish liras, I have to translate it from dollars into Turkish money. You have, let's say, a lira in your pocket, and you're walking around Eminönü, and you see an envelope full of $100 Turkish liras, you go like, man, I could go to the bazaar, right? I don't know, right? Alternately, you may different. If you already have, let's say, 2,000 Turkish lira is in your pocket, and you find a bill of 5 Turkish liras, you'll behave differently. So in decision making, your starting point is very important. So that's why we ask this question. Suppose you already own an iPod, would that make a difference? Your starting point is very important. So first determine the facts, then identify the ethical issues involved. People go, but this is pretty easy. It's not. There's a book published out of Princeton by a former professor of mine, actually, Max Bezemann and Anton Brunsell, called Blindfolds. Each one of us, when we make any decision, including ethical decisions, we have cognitive blindfolds in front of us. Okay, let's take a look at a couple of them, right? Cognitive biases. One of it is the availability and representativeness heuristic. This comes from the research by Robert Kahneman and Amos Tversky from Stanford, for which they won the Nobel Prize. So I'll give you a short question, and I want you to answer that without talking to anybody on a piece of paper or in your head, okay? I'm going to ask you this question. It's written right here, right? So I have a friend who has 6 children. Which is the most likely, so this is really true, behind my house in Nevada, I have a friend, and I hope I just didn't break my watch. It's just disconnected. I'll reconnect it later on. Okay. So I want to make sure I don't go over time. So see here. Here's the question. I have a friend who has 6 children. Which is the most likely sequence of the gender in which these children were born? Pick any of the following sequences. Are they girl, girl, girl, boy, boy, boy? Are they boy, girl, girl, boy, girl, boy? Or were they born girl, girl, girl, boy, boy, boy? Think about it for 5 seconds. There's no magic here. How many of you think that my friend's children were number 1, girl, girl, girl, girl, girl, girl? Raise your hand. About 8. How many of you think the boy, girl, girl, boy, girl, boy? Vast majority. How many of you thought it was girl, girl, girl, boy, boy, boy? How about another, maybe 10, 15? What you fell victim to, and this is on the research from Kahneman and Tversky, you fell victim to what we call the availability heuristic. A heuristic is a rule of thumb or judgmental strategy that each one of us uses when we make decisions, right? So you thought, the last time I saw a family of 6, what did it look like? And you applied it to this. But in statistics, what do we know about, going from 1 to the population, right? If you remember your stat class here, you can't do that. You can't use a sample of 1 to make decisions. You remember that in your stat course? Yeah, I see some of you shaking your head. Let me give you another question. It's not written here. At the University of Nevada, I have another friend. He is kind of a bit short. He's shy. And he likes to write and read poetry. Did you get that? Short, shy, not shy, shy, and likes to write and read poetry. Which is he more likely to be a professor of? Is he a professor of English? Or is he a professor of Chinese studies? Which one do you think is more likely to be a professor of? Professor of English or professor of Chinese studies? How many of you think he's a professor of English? How about 20? How many of you think he's a professor of Chinese studies? You guys don't want to raise your hand, huh? Slight majority. Actually, the amount of data I give you is insufficient. But in your head, you have stereotypes. People who are short, shy, and likes to write poetry. You guys watch too many kung fu movies, I don't know, Tai Chi or whatever it is, Last Samurai, right? And you were like, oh, Lots of short people running around in there, right? Must be that all people from China are short. They are not. That is what we call the representativeness heuristic. You use that to make decisions. As I told you, those questions are not mine. They are Cameron Tversky's questions. Their research won them the Nobel Prize, and that paper from which those questions come from was published in the journal Science, one of the top academic journals in the world. So when you decide to get married, you see somebody, you go like, oh my God, he looks like Tom Cruise. Or, oh my God, he looks like, what's a female actress? I don't know. But you go like, wow, I'm running to your mother. I go, hey Baba, you know, I want to get married right away, right? You're falling victim to the availability heuristic or the representativeness heuristic. Think twice, okay? You can don't, so the same thing with ethical dilemmas. One, this is the notion of bounded ethicality. Another bias that leads people not to be able, it's dangerous right here, not to be able, does this connect to the speakers? Does it connects? So this is relatively new. I have no clue what I did. This is relatively new. So I'm just going to show you this real quickly. This links to a video. Here we go. We have no sound. Is there sound? I'll tell you what it is. We don't have time to, we'll just, so bounded ethicality is the idea that our ability to make ethical choices is often restricted because of internal and external pressures, and most people are usually ethical, but not completely so. Just like people are generally not rational, but not as completely logical. Yeah, I don't know why the sound is not playing. Is there sound somewhere? You can read it as it's going through. I have several videos, unfortunately, if somebody would work on the sound. Okay, this is from my alma mater where I got my PhD from. We'll come back to that. If somebody would work on the sound, that'd be really great. So bounded ethicality is this inability to basically, because of your reflexes, your internal and biases and external pressure, that you are unable, if there's an ethical dilemma, you are unable to see it. It's not that, you can't even see it, right? So I have no clue what's happening. Okay. Is it back, the sound? Yeah. Go back. The sound is back? Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll skip that and keep going, because later on I'm going to need it. So this inability to recognize ethical issues because of biases like availability heuristic, representativeness heuristic, bounded ethicality is what we call normative myopia. And you go like, does this happen? When we look at business schools in America, we did a survey to find out how many students cheat on their exams. What percentage of students you think in America have ever cheated on their exams? Give me some numbers. 10%, 20%, anybody? How many? Higher? 5%? Louder? 25. I need to turn this on so I can hear you better. It'll just capture your voice better. Okay, 25. Who else? Yeah? 5. Anybody else? Any others professors who studied in America? Dr. Babajan? 35. Rector?
None. 0.
70%. 70% of students in business schools in America admit having cheated at some point in time. And you go like, wow. Medical students, medical school students are not far behind. They're like 68%, right? This is really bad. The point I'm trying to make is that when you ask people, why do they cheat? They go like, well, if you snooze, you lose. In other words, they've shut down part of themselves, right? The short-sightedness about values. They may be good people, but when it comes to exam or getting ahead, they're going to do whatever it takes to get ahead, okay? So normative myopia exists everywhere. So what are the ethical issues involved in the iPod case? Several issues, right? You found the iPod. It's not yours. You really should try to find a way to return it, right? But what are you doing? You're going like, you know, I found this iPod, I'm putting it next to my briefcase, and I'm going to wait 60 minutes because that's the length of the class. So I'm actually being a good person. I'm going to give whoever lost it 60 whole minutes to come and claim the iPod. After that, it's mine. What do you think? Is that a good thing? Dr. Hanifi? Yeah? But you see the problem, right? Let's assume you own an iPod that costs $600. You would not want somebody to just wait 60 minutes before they return it to you. Do you understand what I'm saying, right? Okay. So returning the iPod, somebody might say, I found the iPod, I'm not going to steal it, but I'm going to leave it there. What do you think? Is that an ethical decision or not? It's not, because not doing something is also unethical, right? You're going by the road and there's somebody who clearly is lying down sick, and you go like, I can't help him, but I'm not going to do anything about it. That you're making an ethical decision by not doing anything. Do you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So identifying the issues are important. In identifying the issues, one of the most important things, step number 3, is to identify the stakeholders, right? So stakeholders are anybody, all the individuals or groups affected by a decision or the operation of an individual. And it's important when you're involved in an ethical dilemma to look at it from many stakeholders' perspective. So let me give you an example. You're working, and the person next to you is your best friend. He's already married. Are you listening to that right now? It's like a Turkish soap opera. You know those Turkish movies, right? Right? And your best friend has a secretary. He's already married. And you find that he's cheating with his secretary. You know what cheating is, right? Yeah, you guys know that, right? Okay. But you also know his wife. Would you go and tell his wife that he's cheating with his secretary? How many of you would go and tell his wife? A minority, right? Now let's assume his wife is your sister. How many of you would go and tell your sister that his husband is cheating on him? Yeah, that's what I thought. Most of you. Do you see what I have done? I have twisted it to make you change your position as a stakeholder. We call that ethical legitimacy. Is your decision still legitimate if you switch place with the person who lost the iPod? Let's say you are not the one who, let's say you are somebody who heard John found your iPod. You would like John to do whatever he can to find you and give you your iPod back. You spent many hours working to collect what? $500 is 3,000 liras about. To buy an iPod, you have personal things on it. You would like him to do that. So when you're not sure how to behave in an ethical dilemma, switch your position. Do you understand what I'm saying? What if you were me? And that's what the stakeholder's perspective is doing. In trying to make this decision, what you need to do is to draw a stakeholder map. So here's an example. This is a stakeholder map, right? This is an example for, let's say, a hospital, and so you have the hospital right here, you have the suppliers of hospital, competitors, employees, unions, customers, financial, state government. For the case of the iPod, you have the iPod in the middle. You probably would have the owner of the iPod. Since it's at the university, you have Rector Ujjal right there who's worried too many iPods getting stolen on campus, right? Including probably his own. And you have other students, you have parents, you have the police. Do you understand? You have many stakeholders. One of the most important things that you can do in resolving an ethical dilemma is to draw a stakeholder map. Okay. Once you do that, then you have some special questions to ask yourself. Who are your stakeholders currently, and what are potential stakeholders? If a lot of people are getting things lost at Istanbul Ticaret, not just iPods, backpacks, books, maybe even your medicine gets stolen from your backpack, or if there's a climate of crime at Istanbul Ticaret, what's going to happen? And let's say, I'm not saying you would do that, let's say Rector Ujjal is not doing anything about it. Sooner or later, parents are going to go like, we don't have our kids to go to Istanbul Ticaret. There's too much crime. And the police from outside, they're going to go like, security at Istanbul Ticaret is not doing anything. We have to come on campus and do something. So what you have to ask yourself is, who are our stakeholders currently? Who are potential stakeholders? How does each affect us? How do we affect them? What assumptions do we make about our, if the administration of the university decides not to do anything about a lot of theft on campus, that means the administration is saying students don't matter, right? That's the assumption they are making. And finally, how do you measure each variable? In any ethical dilemma, the most important thing to do, besides getting the facts, identifying the issues, identifying the stakeholders, is to find out how big the problem is. If in 1 year, one iPod gets stolen, that's not a problem. But if in 1 year, you have 500 instances of theft, now you have a huge problem. So you need to know how big is that problem, okay? So moving from there, now the students are getting things stolen at Istanbul Ticaret. Administration is not doing anything, so what are they going to do? So maybe you by yourself you can do something, you by yourself you can do something, you by yourself you can do something. You're out there in the cafeteria, you're eating, you're like, you know what? Let's join together. Let's join together and go to the 5th floor, right? And knock on Dr. Rector Oulu's door. When you join together as a coalition, you have power. If you are trying as a businessman to resolve an ethical dilemma, you want to act before people join into coalitions. That makes sense, okay? So coalitions will form partly because they have strength. It's us versus them. The administration is not doing anything, and you want to map out what happens. So let's here's an example. This is a major problem that happened in the United States. I will not show you the video, partly because of a sound problem. I'll tell you what it is. The Exxon Valdez in the United States, just as the Gulf of Mexico, was, before the Gulf of Mexico, the largest oil spill in American history. 11 million barrels of oil were poured into the ocean. And the federal government in the United States did nothing. And especially the oil companies like Exxon and Texaco, who had promised to have special tankers that were double-hulled to protect against accidents, actually fought to prevent that from happening. They kept their ship with only one hull. And that night, the captain of the ship got drunk. Can you imagine the captain of a plane getting drunk? And he says to somebody who was not qualified, you steer that ship. The tanker hit a reef, and it has taken from 1983 to now, and it's not yet done, to clean the effects of that spill. Huge spill. So what happens then, right? So one of the things that happened is, I'll show you this. Coalitions formed. Where is this? So coalitions formed, and this is what you want to avoid, right? So on one hand, you had one coalition right here. This is very weird. Sorry, here goes. One coalition right here is the public, the consumers. People lost their livelihood. Whole fishing industry around Prince William Sound went down, right? On the other side here, competitors got worried because they didn't want the federal government to pass laws. Here, you have the local government, here the federal government, because people vote, right? They formed coalitions. And finally, the media wanted to know what was happening, and they formed coalitions. So you, as a decision maker, you want to act before coalitions form. You want to make a decision before it becomes too big. Because when coalitions form, if all the students at Istanbul Ticaret stand up as one body and goes to the administration and say, we want you to do something about security on campus, the administration has to listen, right? So you want to act proactively before that happens. So, as I said, shifting your role may enable you to make a decision rather than being the position the person discovers the iPod. What would you do if there were a person who lost it? Rather than being the friend of this person next to you who's cheating on his wife with his secretary, if you were the brother of that lady he's married to, you get upset. You probably go and find the biggest piece of wood to hit him with, right? It's a different approach. So change position. I'm not saying go beat up your brother-in-law. How does that impact your thinking? What would your judgment be if you're a friend who asks for an advice? So people put pressure on each other, right? You're a manager. Employees come to you and complain. Rafik got a promotion. I am Omer. I didn't get a promotion. Why? Okay? And you go like, oh, I see you go with Omer all the time to have chai. That's probably why he got the promotion. You see, there's perception there, and so you want to be really careful. So what are our stakeholders doing? What is the threshold between action and inaction? Before students get upset, do you want to act? What are their beliefs? What assumptions are they making about us? What assumptions are implicit in our strategy? Is there no cooperative potential? Let me tell you a story. This woman is pregnant. It's a true story. She's pregnant. No, she already had a baby. Her husband and her, have been trying for years to get this baby. They finally got a baby, and the baby is 7 years old. And the baby has to go to the hospital. You know how you go to the hospital, they fix something, and then you go home, right? So they go to the hospital, go to emergency, and the nurse has to give a shot to the baby. Then it's midnight, it's late at night, and she's very tired. There are 2 syringes in front of her. One for that baby, one for an adult. And what does she do? She picks the syringe for the adult and injects the baby with. Immediately, the baby goes into a coma. The baby goes into a coma. And what happens is the doctors come running and they go, what happened? And the nurse says, I gave him this. And the doctor looks at it and goes like, you gave him the dosage of an adult. So they have an antidote, a syringe, and they plunge it in the heart of the baby. And massage his heart. This is a true story, by the way. Massage his heart. He goes into a coma. 3 days later, the baby dies. These parents have been trying for 15 years to get a baby. And that baby died because that nurse was tired at the end of her shift, was not paying attention, and basically through her mistake killed that baby. Now, the hospital realized it was their mistake. So instead of beating around the bush and going like, not our fault or whatever, they went to the parents and went, look, we made a mistake. It was our employee. We will pay you enough to compensate for the damages. And the parents said, okay, we'll take the money, but we don't want this to ever happen to another baby anywhere in America again. And so today, if any one of you goes to the United States and you have to go to a hospital or to a doctor to get an injection, on the bottle will be your name and your date of birth. And the nurse will say, Rashid, what's your full name? And what's your date of birth? And you have to give that information completely and correctly before you get an injection. Do you see what I'm saying? So in resolving ethical dilemmas, in something as horrible as having your child, your only child, die, the hospital found a way to cooperate. Do you understand what I'm saying? In ethical dilemmas, you should not always assume that people don't want to resolve it, okay? Are the differences between us superficial? How can they influence me, and at what cost? What stakes they have in us? Okay? What are the possible alternatives? Try to use moral imagination. I'm going to try to finish in about 10 minutes because we started about 3:20. Okay? And I know a couple of you have to leave, so that's okay. So use moral imagination. Don't put the iPod next to you and go like, hey, I waited a whole class period. If she didn't show up to claim that iPod, too bad, right? Haven't you heard people like that? You lost it, I found it, it's mine. You know that, you know? You're saying yes, right? You've seen people use that strategy, right? You lost it? Well, guess what? I don't see your name on that 500 lira bill. Where is it? Where does it say Rafik on it? Right? And that's it. So people use sometimes very simple strategies to resolve ethical dilemmas. You want to go beyond that, right? You want to be creative. So instead of living in next to you, you could go to the professor and say, excuse me, somebody lost their iPod here. Or you could go early, right, the next class period, and say somebody in your class lost their iPod. Or you could write on the board a little note, whoever lost their iPod and can prove it's theirs, you can get theirs. Or you can go on the Facebook page for Istanbul Ticaret, or you can put posters around campus. You see what I'm saying? Moral imagination. Use moral imagination in trying to solve ethical dilemmas, especially major ones. If you want a pencil in the cafeteria worth, 1/4 of a lira, who cares? Right? If you find a mobile pen that costs 1,000 liras, somebody cares. Right? That's what we're talking about. So it's important not to consider only the obvious options, but also the more subtle ones. And ask yourself this question. At the end of the day, in any ethical dilemma, let's say you become president of a bank, or you're working for a major advertising agency, or you're head of a law firm, or you become Minister of Education for Turkey, right? Because some of you, by the grace of Allah, will become fantastic, right? Inshallah, all of you, right? And ask yourself, when you make any decision, how does that reflect on me? What is the effect on my integrity and character? Right? Because every decision you make, you're setting the example for the people who work for you. If you look at major ethical scandals in the West, Société Générale in France, HSBC in England, Enron in the United States, WorldCom in the United States, it all started with a leader. The leader started cheating and lying, and everybody else below, the leader's cheating, we are going to cheat. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you become a leader, ask yourself that question. What example am I setting for people below me? All right? And then explore alternatives. We've talked about that. Don't just say that if I don't take it, somebody else will, and keep them. Ethical fading, I'm not going to talk about it because of time. And then step number 5, one of my professors, Herbert Simon, won the Nobel Prize. And I remember I was sitting in his class one day, and he said something like this. He said, when we make decisions, each one of us can process only 7 bits of information at a time. The A9 processor or A10 processors in your iPhone is a 64-bit microprocessor. It processes, I know I was looking for you, it processes information much more efficiently. But that doesn't mean it makes good decisions, right? It only does what you tell it to do. So as human beings, we are not very good at thinking about all the alternatives, all the criteria about to weigh these alternatives with, and look at all of them inside of our head and then make a decision. Cognitively, we are unable to do that. Maybe we can teach ourselves to do that, but very few of us, and I'm sure there's some people who can, but I know I can. Maybe can't. All right? So, what you can do is to basically do this little trick that I'm going to show you right here. So let's assume, I'm going to take a silly example, right? So you found I have to be careful what example I pick. I don't want to get trouble. The rector is sitting right there. Rector 1 and Rector 2, and many important people. So let's assume you found the iPod. I was going to say, let's assume you get married and have 3 potential persons, but that probably is not a good idea right here. So we'll stick to the iPod, the iPod idea. All right? My wife didn't hear that. Okay. So you have 4 potential. So you can keep the iPod, you can put a poster out, you can put it on Facebook, you can contact the professor, and you have several criteria: fairness, cost, how much it's going to cost you. It could be another criteria here. Cost and price are pretty close together. Convenience, how much time am I going to have to take? The first thing you do is come up with weights. And the weights have to add up to 1, right? And then you are going to rate each criteria on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being best, 1 being worse. Remembering that the meaning of the scale changes. So a high cost is bad, gets a 2. High convenience is good, gets a 10. Do you understand what I'm saying? The meaning of scale, right? So you rate each criteria, and then you're going to do that for all the alternatives, and then you're going to multiply them by the weight, which stays the same across your alternatives. Do that for all of them, and choose this one. Maybe. Normally I would ask you why, but I'm giving you all the answers right now. The reason is because even though this may be the best one, politically it's infeasible. Do you understand? Organizations are political entities. They're not rational entities. You can't get enough support from all stakeholders to do this. Rector Ujjal might go like, we're going to have a security guard in front of every classroom. And when you come in, you show me what you have, and when you come out, you show me what you have. Dr. Nihat from Istanbul Ticaret Üniversitesi would go like, you know how much it's going to cost us? Right? He's smiling already, right? Well, but you understand, maybe we'll do another thing. We try to teach students about good values and ethics. And that is number 2, right? And maybe we'll pick this one. Do you understand what I'm saying? Just because somebody ends number 1, one alternative ends number 1, you go like, but this is easy. Now just imagine if you had 25 alternatives and 10 criteria. Becomes much more difficult, isn't it? That's what Herbert Simon said. You want to transfer the complexity of the decision-making process to a technique like this. Now, in the business school, in the MBA program, we teach you about linear programming. We teach you about integer programming. We teach you other techniques that are more computer-based. This is a quick and easy way to do it, but it removes a lot. It tends to remove the biases with respect to the weights. Now I'm speaking to the professors here right now. How do you come up with those weights? They don't just drop up from the sky. If you're working for Turkish Telecom, you're going to invest 10 billion liras building a new network system in Turkey. You are not just going to grab the weights of the thin air. You're going to have multiple raters. You're going to calculate what we call an intra-class correlation coefficient, Schout and Fleiss, publish a paper on that, and that will get you the exact weights that you want. So while I'm talking about this at a basic level, we have very precise techniques to do this in a much more sophisticated and complex manner. All right? So you've done this. Now exploring strategies, do you be proactive or reactive? Your goal is to win, create a win-win situation. How much time do I have? Okay, I think I'm going to conclude here. One last point, because I promised Dr. Nihad has to run to teach a class. Let me conclude here. And you have the slide in front of you. Here's a simple test. At the end of all of this, think inside your head for a second. Who is the person you most admire and want to be most like? Some of you will say your mom, others will say Rector Ali Osman Öztürk, I don't know. Some of you, anybody, right? Could be a friend, right? A boss. Ask yourself, if you're about to do something unethical, what would that person think of you? Would you take, I don't know, national newspaper of Turkey, maybe a Daily Sabah or Hurriyet? Mom, Baba, Rafik Beekun'u is going to jail. Would you show it to them and go like, are you proud? I'm going to jail tomorrow. The police is coming to get me right now. If you are not, if that person you most admire would disapprove, don't do it. All right? Thank you very much, guys. I kept my promise.
Sevgili misafirlerimiz, çok teşekkür ediyoruz Rafik Beekun'a. Hediye takdimi için Sayın Rektörümüz Profesör Doktor Yücel Uğurlu'yu ve İTO Genel Sekreterimiz ve Mütevelliçemiz Doçent Doktor Nihat Alayoğlu'nu kürsüye davet ediyorum. Değerli öğrencilerimiz, misafirlerimiz salonuna uğradıktan sonra sizlerden salonda 5 dakika kalmanızı rica edeceğim. Rektör hocamız sizlere misafirlerimizi yolcu ettikten sonra çok kısa bir paylaşım yapacaktır.
4 dakika sadece.
Now I have to buy a whole new suitcase.